Do you remember those classic crock-pot recipes from the slow cooker boom of the 1970s? They once filled homes with warmth, gratitude, and the smell of slow-cooked care. When did we stop cooking these beloved dishes that once held whole families together? We're counting down the top 25 crock-pot meals that define 1970s comfort food. From sweet, slow-cooked surprises and thrifty casseroles to party night classics and the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it suppers, these iconic dishes captured both nostalgia and innovation in every bite. Which beloved recipe earned the #1 spot? Let's start the countdown with number 25. Number 25 brings a sweet surprise: rice pudding, the slow cooker dessert that turned weeknights into something special. In kitchens across America, a simple mix of rice, eggs, condensed milk, sugar, and raisins would bubble away for 6 to 8 hours on low, filling homes with a warm, custardy aroma. The steady ceramic heat of the crock-pot meant no scorched bottoms and a creamy, tender texture every time, no stirring required. Recipe cards from 1968 through the early 80s promised a foolproof treat, perfect for potlucks or an after-dinner reward. While savory casseroles ruled most crock-pot cookbooks, rice pudding proved the appliance could do more than main courses, opening the door to a world of set-it-and-forget-it comfort desserts. Cabbage roll casserole landed in Midwestern slow cooker cookbooks between 1972 and 1978, offering a shortcut to a beloved comfort dish. Instead of rolling each cabbage leaf by hand, home cooks layered chopped cabbage, seasoned ground beef, cooked rice, and tomato soup right into the crock-pot. This clever method cut prep time in half, transforming a labor-intensive tradition into a weeknight staple. The casserole simmered for hours, letting the flavors meld while families went about their day. It captured the spirit of the era, stretching a pound of beef, using pantry staples, and bringing Eastern European flavors to the American table. Though never a national sensation, it became a regional favorite, celebrated in community cookbooks for its hearty, crowd-pleasing simplicity. Chicken cacciatore brought a rustic, from-scratch flair to the 1970s crock-pot lineup. Home cooks reached for bone-in chicken pieces, canned tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, and a handful of garlic, letting everything simmer low and slow for 6 to 8 hours. The result was meat so tender it slipped off the bone, bathed in a rich, savory sauce that clung to every bite. Unlike the era's famous soup-based casseroles, this dish echoed Italian-American roots and rewarded patience with deep, layered flavor. Magazine columns and home economics writers praised its simplicity and authenticity, showing that the slow cooker could handle more than shortcuts. Chicken cacciatore earned a steady following, especially among families craving something hearty and saucy, but it never quite reached the casserole fame of the party circuit classics. Italian meatball casserole found its way onto church supper tables and into spiral-bound cookbooks from Ohio to Texas between 1974 and 1978. These casseroles started with frozen meatballs, poured over with jarred marinara, and finished with a thick layer of mozzarella and parmesan, simple, hearty, and built to feed a crowd. Contributors like Mrs. Helen DeMarco or the St. Mark's Youth Group were often listed right on the recipe page, tracing a map of how dishes traveled from one congregation to the next. This casserole thrived at potlucks, where a bubbling crock-pot could hold its own among the casseroles and sheet cakes, and where a single scoop was never enough. While it rarely replaced weeknight mainstays, its reputation as a shareable, satisfying centerpiece made it a community favorite, setting the tone for the pasta bakes and saucy casseroles that followed. Baked ziti and its cousin, macaroni casserole, brought a taste of Sunday dinner to the crock-pot. No oven required. Recipes from 1973 to 1979 in household columns called for layering al dente noodles with tomato sauce, ricotta, or cottage cheese, and plenty of mozzarella, then letting the whole dish bubble away for hours. The trick, as every home cook learned, was to keep the noodles slightly undercooked before adding them, so they would hold their shape and soak up flavor without turning to mush. This cheesy, family-friendly staple became a go-to for busy weeknights and potlucks alike. While some reviewers debated the texture, the convenience of a hands-off pasta bake kept it in steady rotation, bridging the gap between hearty casseroles and the playful finger foods that followed. Sweet and sour. Cocktail wieners turned every coffee table into a party zone in the late 70s. Cocktail sausages simmered for hours in a glaze of grape jam and yellow mustard, the kind of sticky sweet sauce that clung to toothpicks and napkins alike. Party magazine columns from 1975 through 1979 gave these wieners the spotlight, promising hosts a crowd pleaser that could hold its heat for hours on the buffet line. The combination of sweet fruit and savory meat felt bold, even a little mischievous, and fit right in with the decades' love for unexpected flavor mashups. While hardly anyone served these for dinner, no potluck or holiday gathering was complete without a crock-pot bubbling away in the corner, filling the room with an aroma that meant the party had officially started. Paprika chicken brought a flash of color and a burst of real spice to the 1970s crock-pot table. Rival's 1974 booklets championed this Hungarian-inspired stew, calling for a whole cut-up chicken, thick slices of onion, and a generous spoonful of sweet paprika. No soup cans, no shortcut packets, just pantry staples and bold flavor. As the hours ticked by, paprika's deep red hue seeped into the sauce, turning the kitchen air fragrant and slightly smoky. Slow, moist heat kept the paprika from tasting bitter, a common pitfall on the stovetop, while the chicken turned fork tender, soaking up every bit of the spiced gravy. This dish stood out for its simplicity and its refusal to lean on processed seasonings, offering a different path for families who wanted something vivid and warming. Paprika chicken paved the way for the chilly nights ahead, showing that the crock-pot could handle spice without losing its gentle touch. Male chauvinist. Chili landed in more than 20 regional cookbooks during the late 1970s. Its name as bold as the flavors simmering inside. 2 pounds of meat, usually a mix of ground beef and spicy sausage, formed the base, joined by kidney beans, tomatoes, and a packet of McCormick chili seasoning. The recipe's provocative title played on gender stereotypes of the era, poking fun at the idea that only men could handle real heat. Cookbook editors and church committees across the Midwest and South included the chili, sometimes with tongue-in-cheek notes about man-sized appetites. The humor, rooted in the decades' shifting gender roles, reflected both the confidence and contradictions of the time. While the name faded as tastes and attitudes changed, the chili's reliance on packet spices and convenience beans helped launch the trend of set-and-forget, crowd-pleasing slow-cooker meals. Its cultural notoriety, more than its longevity, secures its spot in the crock-pot canon. Bologna Baga Bake stands out as the kind of quirky, resourceful dish that could only have come from the heartland in the mid-1970s. At a time when every penny counted, Midwestern cooks looked to ring bologna, a cheap, sturdy sausage, and paired it with rutabaga, potatoes, and onions, all tossed into the crock-pot for a long, slow simmer. State Fair cookbooks from 1973 through 1977 featured this budget-friendly stew, often boasting that it cost less than 40 cents per serving in 1976. The recipe's roots run deep in rural kitchens, where stretching a dollar and using what was on hand was a matter of pride. Unlike the creamy casseroles packed with canned soup, this meal leaned on the earthy sweetness of root vegetables and the smoky bite of bologna, creating a flavor that's both odd and oddly comforting. Bologna Baga Bake may have never left its regional home, but in the world of slow cooker innovation, it's a reminder that necessity and a little ingenuity can produce something truly memorable. Tuna noodle casserole slid into crock-pot cookbooks as the ultimate pantry meal. No fresh meat or produce required, just a can of tuna, a bag of egg noodles, and a trusty can of cream of mushroom soup. PTA fundraiser booklets from 1974 to 1980 swapped oven instructions for slow cooker tweaks, reminding cooks to halve the soup's liquid so the noodles wouldn't turn to mush. Some versions tossed in frozen peas or a sprinkle of cheddar, but the backbone stayed the same. Canned tuna, condensed soup, and noodles layered straight into the pot. The dish's appeal was obvious: cheap, filling, and ready to eat after a long day. But even as it became a weeknight regular, not everyone loved the outcome. The Crock-Pot's gentle heat often left the noodles more soft than springy, and the creamy sauce could border on gluey. Still, for families on a budget, tuna noodle casserole delivered comfort and convenience, earning its spot in the era's mid-tier favorites. Pork chop casserole rose to steady fame in the 1970s as a weeknight fix that made the most of budget cuts. Home cooks would start by quickly browning pork chops, then nestle them over a bed of uncooked rice in the crock-pot. A can of cream of mushroom soup, sometimes thinned with a splash of water or milk, was poured over everything. As the hours ticked by, the rice absorbed every drop of juice from the chops and soup, turning what could have been a dry, chewy meal into something tender and satisfying. Magazine clippings from the era touted this as a foolproof way to stretch a family pack of pork into a full supper. No oven required. The slow, gentle heat coaxed flavor out of the simplest ingredients, and the result was a creamy, savory casserole that waited patiently until dinner time. Pork chop casserole's reputation for low-fuss comfort secured its spot as a mid-ranking classic and set the stage for the saucy chicken dishes that climbed even higher in the Crock-Pot Hall of Fame. Barbecue chicken earned its spot in the Crock-Pot Hall of Fame by making the most of bottled convenience and a little pantry magic. In kitchens from coast to coast, home cooks reached for chicken pieces, a bottle of store-bought barbecue sauce, and a packet of dry onion soup mix. Ingredients that promised big flavor without fuss. Pamphlets and recipe cards from the mid-1970s show this combination popping up everywhere, with instructions as simple as layering everything in the slow cooker and letting it bubble away for 6 hours. The result? Chicken so tender it could be shredded for sandwiches or served whole over rice, all coated in a tangy, savory sauce that tasted like summer picnics, no grill required. This meal's real genius was in its adaptability. Leftovers slid easily into lunchboxes or became the base for next-day casseroles. Its blend of smoky sweetness and oniony depth made barbecue chicken a weeknight staple and a mid-list favorite for anyone craving saucy, hands-off comfort. 6-layer dinner became a fixture in Crock-Pot manuals just as the 1977 energy crisis pushed families to rethink how they cooked. Manuals from that year spelled out the savings. A slow cooker running all day used less electricity than an oven running for an hour, costing just pennies to operate. The recipe itself was a lesson in thrift and balance. Ground beef pressed into the bottom, then potatoes, onions, celery, corn, and a blanket of canned tomatoes, each layer seasoned and stacked with purpose. As the hours passed, the flavors mingled and the broth bubbled up from the bottom, creating a hearty one-pot meal that stretched a pound of meat across a family table. Home economists and appliance ads pointed to 6-layer dinner as proof that the Crock-Pot wasn't just about convenience, it was about efficiency too. In a decade defined by fuel shortages and rising prices, this stacked casserole offered comfort without waste and a full belly on a budget. Vegetable beef soup simmered its way into the top Crock-Pot rankings by promising a full meal in a single steaming bowl. Chunks of beef browned on the stovetop or dropped in raw mingled with a generous helping of frozen mixed vegetables. Peas, carrots, green beans, and corn, straight from the bag. Canned tomato soup or stewed tomatoes formed the base, giving the broth a rich, tangy depth that clung to every bite. Families loved how the slow cooker preserved the texture of those frozen veggies, keeping them vibrant instead of mushy. Church cookbook soup sections from the mid-1970s are packed with handwritten notes praising this recipe's ability to stretch a small amount of meat into dinner for 6. Leftovers, if there were any, often found new life as the filling for next-day sandwiches or a quick lunch. With its blend of nutrition, thrift, and ease, vegetable beef soup became a weeknight hero, earning its place high on the list of 1970s crock-pot classics. Sloppy Joes, or as some Midwest kids called them, Jenny Joes, brought a welcome dose of fun to the 1970s crock-pot lineup. The secret wasn't just the messy, tangy sandwich filling, but how a pound of ground beef could stretch across a whole crowd with the help of a single can from the pantry. Instead of the usual tomato sauce, cooks reached for condensed chicken gumbo or tomato soup, giving the mix a sweet, savory kick that clung to every bun. The slow cooker kept the filling bubbling hot for hours, making it perfect for self-serve dinners or after-school snacking. Just lift the lid and scoop. Regional cookbooks and PTA fundraisers from Ohio to Nebraska swapped stories of Jenny Joes as the go-to for birthday parties and scout meetings, with some families insisting on extra pickles or a splash of Worcestershire for flair. Sloppy Joes proved the crock-pot could turn pantry basics into a meal that was both playful and practical, setting the stage for even creamier, soup-based casseroles to come. Spinach casserole slides into the top 10 as the ultimate vegetable classic of the 1970s crock-pot era. In fundraising cookbooks and church recipe swaps, this dish stood out for its easy mix of frozen spinach, wide egg noodles, and a can of cream of mushroom soup. Some cooks added a shake of parmesan or a handful of breadcrumbs, but the essentials rarely changed. The slow cooker's steady heat kept the casserole moist, solving the age-old problem of dry, rubbery noodles that plagued oven versions. For families looking to sneak more greens onto the dinner table, this was the gentle nudge, a creamy, comforting blend that felt both familiar and just a little bit virtuous. Potluck tables and PTA dinners gave spinach casserole its staying power, where it was often the only green dish in a sea of cheese and meat. Even today, the formula holds up. A bag of frozen vegetables, a can of soup, and a few hours on low. It's a lighter note in a countdown heavy on cheese and beef, proving that even in the age of convenience, there was always room for a little green. Ham and broccoli chowder brought together thrift and comfort in a way that felt tailor-made for cold-weather kitchens. Leftover ham from Sunday's roast found new life alongside frozen broccoli florets, diced potatoes, and a handful of Swiss or processed cheese, all stirred into a creamy base built from condensed soup. Weeknight magazine columns in the late 70s ran headlines like, "Stretch that ham," and urged cooks to save every last cube for this hearty, bubbling chowder. The slow cooker's gentle heat coaxed out the smoky flavor of ham while keeping broccoli tender but bright, creating a soup that could hold its own on any potluck table. Chowder recipes promised a warm, inviting bowl that stayed ready for hours, perfect for gatherings where second helpings were expected. For families watching their grocery budgets, this dish turned leftovers and freezer staples into a meal that felt both generous and resourceful. Ham and broccoli chowder became a winter favorite, capturing the era's knack for creamy, crowd-pleasing comfort, with a thrifty twist that made every spoonful count. Land your man. Baked beans didn't just promise a full belly. They came with a wink and a nudge, straight from the era's potluck humor playbook. The name alone, splashed across more than 30 church and community cookbooks between 1973 and 1978, was designed to catch the eye and spark a grin, especially at a time when recipe titles doubled as matchmaking advice. Underneath the jokey headline, though, was a dish that delivered: canned pork and beans, thick-cut bacon, a pour of molasses, and a generous scoop of brown sugar. Some versions called for a dash of mustard or a splash of ketchup, but the real draw was the sticky sweet glaze that clung to every spoonful. Fundraiser pamphlets from the Midwest to the Carolinas boasted this bean bake as the secret weapon for potlucks and church suppers, where the crock-pot kept it bubbling hot for hours. As the sugar-savory craze swept through the decade, Land Your Man baked beans bridged the gap between old-school baked beans and the bolder, party-ready sausage dishes that followed. The name may have been tongue-in-cheek, but its staying power and the empty dish at the end of the night made it a potluck legend. Sausage and peppers brought a little sizzle to the Crock-Pot party circuit, earning its spot as a Tupperware demo favorite in 1977. Italian sausage links, bell peppers, and thick slices of onion tumbled into the slow cooker, often with a splash of tomato or a sprinkle of oregano. The aroma alone could turn a living room into a makeshift trattoria by noon. Tupperware party hosts loved featuring this dish during home demonstrations, knowing the bubbling pot did double duty. It sold the slow cooker and the containers that would soon be filled with leftovers. Oral histories from the era recall rec rooms lined with crock-pots, each one holding a different crowd pleaser, but sausage and peppers always drew a crowd. At multi-crock banquets, guests swapped stories and recipe cards as they spooned glossy strands of peppers over soft rolls or pasta. The dish's popularity at these gatherings helped it leap from party fare to weeknight staple, cementing its place among the top 10. Its lively colors and bold flavors set the stage for the beefy main still to come. But at every Tupperware party, sausage and peppers was the real sales pitch. Easy, festive, and ready for seconds. Pepper steak took the Crock-Pot in a new direction, showing that slow cooking wasn't just for stews and casseroles. In Rival's 1975 cookbook, the instructions called for beef sliced into half-inch strips, an economical cut transformed by hours of gentle heat. Instead of the quick sizzle of a wok, these strips simmered low and slow, soaking up a savory bath of soy sauce, tomato sauce, and a pinch of garlic. Green bell peppers added in the final hour kept their color and bite, turning the pot into a colorful, aromatic mix that felt both familiar and a little exotic for the time. Home cooks found that even tougher cuts like round steak or chuck became fork tender by dinner time. No marinating or searing required. The sauce thickened as it cooked, clinging to the beef and peppers, ready to be spooned over a mound of rice or egg noodles. Pepper steak earned its number 6 spot as a weeknight favorite, hearty, affordable, and proof that the Crock-Pot could bring a taste of the takeout counter home without ever firing up a frying pan. Swiss steak climbed into the top 5 by doing something no stovetop recipe could match, transforming a tough round steak into fork-tender comfort with nothing but thyme, a can of tomatoes, and a packet of dry onion soup mix. Rival's 1974 pamphlets spelled it out. Layer the steak in the Crock-Pot, sprinkle on the onion soup powder, and pour over the tomatoes. The dry mix didn't just save a step. It broke down the steak's lean fibers, infusing every bite with that unmistakable, savory, sweet flavor. For busy cooks, the packet was a guarantee. No need to chop, measure, or hover over a simmering pot. The result was a rich, tomato-based gravy clinging to meat so soft it barely needed a knife. Swiss steak's popularity soared on the back of this shortcut science, earning it a spot in nearly every slow cooker cookbook of the decade. The onion soup mix became a pantry staple, shaping the taste of Crock-Pot dinners to come and paving the way for even bolder, sweeter flavor experiments in the countdown's final dishes. Party meatballs and grape jelly sauce turned the Crock-Pot into the centerpiece of every church social and neighborhood open house. The combination sounded outlandish at first: frozen meatballs, a jar of grape jelly, and a bottle of chili sauce. But the result was pure 1970s. Genius. Glossy, sweet savory bites that disappeared from toothpicks faster than any cheese ball or deviled egg. The earliest printed version of this recipe appeared in a 1974 Minnesota Lutheran Church cookbook, though home economics teachers and Kraft's test kitchen were already spreading the word. No one can claim the invention, but by the end of the decade, grape jelly meatballs had become a fixture at potlucks from Des Moines to Atlanta, their sticky aroma a sure sign the party had started. The Crock-Pot's gentle heat kept them warm for hours, making them perfect for long buffet tables and late arrivals. Recipe cards traveled across state lines, swapped at church bazaars and tucked into PTA newsletters, each with a slight twist. Sometimes a splash of Worcestershire, sometimes a dash of mustard, but always the grape jelly at the heart. More than just an appetizer, these meatballs became a symbol of communal cooking, proof that a simple slow cooker could turn three pantry staples into a legend. Their ubiquity and enduring charm secure them a place in the top 4, just ahead of the main dish heavyweights still to come. Classic Chili Night ranked near the very top for a reason. It wasn't just a meal, but a ritual that brought people together, whether for family dinners or game day gatherings. By the mid-1970s, local newspaper ads across the country trumpeted Chili Night as a weekly event, promising a pot of something hearty and crowd-pleasing, ready the moment everyone walked in the door. The Crock-Pot made this tradition easier than ever. Ground beef browned in the morning, beans straight from the can, a can of tomatoes, and most importantly, a packet of McCormick chili seasoning. That little envelope of spices became the secret handshake of weeknight cooks, guaranteeing a familiar, just spicy enough flavor every time. The slow simmer worked its magic while families were at school and work, coaxing out deep, mingled flavors that no stovetop shortcut could match. Recipe cards and church cookbooks swapped in the era all followed the same formula: dump, stir, forget. Some cooks tossed in a handful of corn, a splash of beer, or a pinch of sugar, but the backbone stayed the same: seasoning packet, ground beef, and beans. Chili Night was more than a meal. It was an act of community. Crock-pots lined up at potlucks, PTA meetings, and living rooms on Super Bowl Sunday, each batch just a little bit different, but all built on the promise of set it and forget it comfort. The standardization of the chili packet didn't just save time, it made it possible for anyone, from rookie to seasoned cook, to deliver a pot that tasted like home. That's why Classic Chili Night holds its place at number 3, endlessly adaptable, instantly recognizable, and always ready to feed a crowd. Creamy chicken and dumplings holds a special place in the Crock-Pot canon, a dish that promised pure comfort with almost no effort at all. The recipe usually started with chicken breasts or thighs nestled into the bottom of the slow cooker, then blanketed in a can or two of condensed cream soup. Cream of chicken, mushroom, or celery. Each one brought its own silky texture and gentle, savory flavor. As the hours ticked by, the chicken poached gently, turning fork tender and soaking up every bit of that creamy sauce. The final touch was always the biscuit topping, canned or homemade dough, dropped in spoonfuls right before dinner. By the time the lid came off, the dumplings had puffed up into soft pillows, floating on a sea of rich gravy. This dish didn't just fill the house with a warm, inviting aroma. It anchored weeknights for families craving something both familiar and indulgent. Rival's own recipe booklets from the late 70s showed just how deeply cream soups had worked their way into the American kitchen. In fact, more than half of the slow cooker recipes published in 1978 called for at least one can of condensed soup, a testament to their power as a shortcut and a flavor booster. Chicken and dumplings became the poster child for this trend, showing off the magic of combining pantry staples with set-it-and-forget-it technology. For many, this was the taste of home, a creamy, bubbling pot that signaled the end of a long day and the start of a cozy meal together. Nothing says 1970s crock-pot cooking quite like a pot roast, quietly transforming in kitchens from coast to coast. The ritual began with a hefty chuck roast, nestled into the ceramic insert alongside chunks of carrot, potato, and onion. Some cooks swore by a packet of onion soup mix sprinkled on top, while others kept it simple: a little salt, a splash of water, maybe a bay leaf for luck. By late afternoon, the aroma had seeped into every corner of the house, promising a dinner that was as tender as it was dependable. For many families, pot roast night was more than just a meal. it was a rhythm. In church cookbooks and neighborhood recipe cards, the instructions rarely changed. Layer, season, set to low, and walk away. The crock-pot's steady heat turned even the toughest cuts into fork-tender slices, their juices pooling at the bottom to make a rich, savory gravy. There was no need to hover or stir. The magic happened while life carried on: errands, homework, Tupperware parties, or a long day at work. Oral histories from the era capture the meal's quiet power. One Iowa homemaker remembered, "Wednesday was pot roast night. Smell followed me upstairs." The roast became a weekly anchor, a guarantee that no matter how hectic the day, dinner would be waiting. In the background, the numbers told their own story. Rivals Crock-Pot sales leapt from $2 million in 1971 to $93 million by 1975, a surge fueled in part by the promise of effortless pot roasts on every family table. Pot roasts' adaptability kept it at the top of the slow cooker charts. Some swapped in parsnips or sweet potatoes, others added red wine or Worcestershire for depth. But the heart of the dish never changed. Simple ingredients, low heat, and the comfort of coming home to something warm and ready. In the world of crock-pot dinners, pot roast remains the gold standard, a dish that embodies both the innovation and the nostalgia of the era. From the humble rice pudding at number 25 to the iconic fall-apart pot roast at number 1, these top 25 1970s crock-pot meals capture a decade shaped by convenience, community, and comfort. The list reveals a clear pattern. Nearly every entry relied on pantry staples: Campbell's soups, Lipton onion mix, and seasoning packets, making set-it-and-forget-it cooking accessible for busy, budget-minded families. The most surprising entries, like Bologna Baga Bake and male chauvinist chili, show how regional quirks and even gendered humor found a place in the slow cooker canon. Throughout, the ranking favored dishes that balanced nostalgia, adaptability, and mass appeal, with pot roast and creamy chicken and dumplings topping the list for their universal recognition and weeknight reliability. Ultimately, the evolution of these meals tells a broader story. The crock-pot was more than a kitchen gadget. It was a social connector, transforming simple ingredients into shared tradition. Even decades later, these recipes remind us how innovation, thrift, and a little bit of creativity could bring families together